First contact gone wrong. The Krek's warship dominance hung in the shadow of Europa, its crystalline hull refracting Jupiter's distant light. Supreme Commander Vex Terra stood at the command center, her iridescent scales shifting colors as she studied the holographic display of their target. New Haven Colony, humanity's first permanent settlement beyond Mars. "These humans puzzle me," she announced to her crew. "Their bodies are so fragile, yet they venture into the harshest environments. They have no natural defenses, yet they expand without fear." Her inner eyelids flickered in contemplation. Perhaps they need a lesson in their place in the galaxy. Her second-in-command, Strategic Officer Kex, approached with a data crystal. "Supreme Commander, we've completed our analysis of the colony. Population 2,000, including 300 in their early development stage. Their defensive capabilities are minimal. They rely primarily on the environment itself for protection." "How primitive." Vex Terra's scales rippled with amusement. "They trust in ice and vacuum to guard them. Show me their young ones." The hologram shifted to display the colony's education center, a transparent dome where young humans gathered to learn. The Kreks had studied thousands of species across the galaxy, and in their experience, a species young were always their most vulnerable point. It was a universal constant, or so they believed. "Their children are kept in this central location," Kex explained. "They appear to be teaching them about stellar navigation." He paused, mandibles clicking in confusion. "Though strangely, they also seem to be teaching them emergency protocols and survival skills." Vex Terra dismissed this detail. "All species protect their young, but few have the strength to protect them from us. Prepare the neural suppressors. We'll take 50 of their children. Once they understand their helplessness, this colony will submit to Krek's protection. They'll pay their tribute in resources, like all sensible species do." The attack began during the colony's rest cycle. Krek's warriors, their armor blending perfectly with the icy environment, breached the outer perimeter without triggering a single alarm. Their first indication that this wouldn't be a typical raid came when they attempted to suppress the human guards. "Supreme Commander," the raid leader's voice crackled over the comm. "The neural suppressors, they're not working correctly. The humans are requiring triple the standard dosage. Increase power and proceed," Vex Terra ordered. "We cannot allow their biological quirks to delay us." The raiders reached the education center, expecting to find sleeping children easy to subdue and transport. Instead, they found the young humans already moving with practiced precision, helping each other don emergency suits, barricading doors, and most surprisingly fighting back. "Watch out." A young human, barely into her second decade, shouted as she activated the emergency protocols they drilled countless times. The lights shifted to red, and atmospheric pressure began to drop in controlled zones, creating barriers of vacuum that the Kreks had to waste precious time navigating. "Their children," Kex exclaimed in disbelief as reports flooded in. "How do they know tactical responses?" The answer came in the form of a young human instructor who had managed to send a brief transmission before being subdued. "New Haven Colony under attack. They're targeting the school. Remember your training, kids. Earth Force Command. Initiative Prometheus is now active." Vex Terra's scales darkened with concern. What is Initiative Prometheus? By the time they learned the answer, it was too late. They managed to capture 30 young humans, but the cost was far higher than expected. 6 Kreks warriors were seriously injured, their advanced armor damaged by improvised weapons and tactics no child should know. As the Dominance broke orbit with its precious cargo, Vex Terra received a transmission that made her scales pale to pure white. It was from Earth Force Command, broadcast on all frequencies in perfect Kreks language. "You have taken our children. Every species in the galaxy knows this is forbidden. You believe you have captured helpless young ones. You are wrong. You believe you have shown your strength. You have revealed your ignorance. You believe you have taught humanity a lesson. But we will show you why taking human children is considered the gravest mistake in the galaxy. Return them immediately, and we may show mercy. Refuse, and you will understand why humanity's children are never taken twice. Vexterra dismissed the warning with a gesture, even as an unfamiliar sensation. Something ancient instincts recognized as fear crept along her spine. After all, what could a species do when their young were helpless in her grasp? She was about to learn exactly how wrong her assumptions were, and why humanity's children were considered untouchable by every spacefaring race that had come before. The line in the stars. Admiral Sarah Chen stood in Earth Force Command's Central Operations Chamber, her weathered face illuminated by the massive holographic display, showing the fastest mobilization of forces in human history. But it wasn't the military response that made hardened alien observers tremble. It was everything else. "Update," she commanded, her voice steady despite the rage burning in her chest. "Initiative Prometheus is fully activated," her XO reported. All 30 children had their emergency transponders active. "We're tracking the Krex vessel across 12 different frequencies they don't even know exist. The children are already implementing their training protocols." On screens around the chamber, civilian ships were launching in unprecedented numbers. Mining vessels, cargo haulers, private yachts. Any spacecraft capable of breaking orbit was joining the pursuit. Their pilots weren't soldiers or warriors. They were teachers, parents, doctors, and ordinary citizens, all answering a call as old as humanity itself. A child was in danger. "Admiral," a communications officer called out, "we're receiving messages from the Galactic Council. The Arcturus representative is requesting immediate communication." The hologram shifted to show Ambassador Zixtol of the Arcturus Confederation, their crystalline form vibrating with obvious distress. "Admiral Chen, you must understand. The Krex are ignorant. They don't know the protocols. They haven't heard the stories." "What stories, Ambassador?" Chen's voice was arctic. "Of the hegemony of Dur, of the Vraxi Empire, of every civilization that made the mistake of threatening human children." The ambassador's crystals chimed in distress. "The Krex are proud and powerful, but they are young among the stars. They don't know why even the most aggressive species give human colonies a wide berth." "Then they'll learn," Chen replied. "Like all the others." In the detention cells aboard the Dominance, Supreme Commander Vexterra was beginning to understand she had made a terrible mistake. The young humans weren't crying or begging. They were organized, coordinated, working together in ways that defied everything she knew about juvenile specimens. "Supreme Commander," her security chief reported, mandibles clicking nervously. "The children, they're singing." "Singing?" Vexterra's scales shifted in confusion. "Earth songs. But they're not random. We've analyzed the patterns. They're using them to communicate, to coordinate, and—" he hesitated. "They're counting down." Through the ship's monitors, they watched as the young humans, led by a girl named Sarah Mitchell, maintained perfect discipline. They had already shorted out 2 security systems and created improvised tools from their restraints. Most disturbing of all, they seemed completely confident in their eventual rescue. "Your species has never successfully raided a human colony." A new transmission cut through their communications. It was Admiral Chen again. "Do you know why?" "Because we don't just protect our young. We teach them to protect themselves. Every human child in your custody has spent their entire life preparing for something like this. They're not your prisoners. They're your countdown timer." Vexterra was about to respond when her tactical officer interrupted, scales pale with fear. "Supreme Commander, you need to see this." The tactical display showed hundreds of ships in pursuit. Military vessels, yes, but they were outnumbered 10-1 by civilian craft. Ships that were pushing their engines far beyond safety limits, burning out their cores just to maintain the chase. "This isn't possible," Vexterra whispered. "These are civilian vessels. They have no weapons, no military training. What do they think they can accomplish? The answer came from an unexpected source, one of her own crew members who had studied human history. "Commander, I've analyzed their historical records. When human children are threatened, their entire society changes. Normal civilians will attempt what their military considers impossible. They will sacrifice everything. Their resources, their ships, their lives, not just for their own offspring, but for any child in danger." As if to prove this point, a new transmission reached them from a civilian vessel at the front of the pursuit. The speaker identified herself as Dr. Emma Torres, a teacher from the New Haven colony. "I taught stellar navigation to those children you took." Her voice was calm but carried an steel edge that made even the hardened Krex warriors uncomfortable. "Every day I looked them in the eyes and promised them they would be safe, that the adults in their lives would always protect them. We are not warriors. We are not soldiers. But we made a promise to those children, and we will cross the galaxy to keep it." In the command center, Admiral Chen watched as the civilian fleet coordinated with military precision, guided by protocols established centuries ago. Protocols created after humanity learned that the galaxy was not always a friendly place, and that their children needed to be ready for anything. "Send the final warning," she ordered. "Let them know exactly what they've awakened." Across every frequency, in every language known to the galaxy, the message went out: "You took our children. Now you face not just our military, not just our weapons, but the fundamental truth that has shaped human society since we first looked to the stars. We will burn down the galaxy itself to protect our young. You have 1 hour to return them. After that, you will understand why taking human children is considered an act of suicide in civilized space." The Krex were about to learn that they hadn't captured helpless children. They had triggered humanity's oldest and most powerful imperative. And in the detention cells, the children's countdown continued, their songs echoing through the ship's corridors like a prophecy of what was to come. Unstoppable force. The Galactic Council had convened an emergency session for the first time in 3 centuries. Representatives from 100 spacefaring civilizations gathered to discuss what many were already calling an extinction-level event, not for humanity, but for the Krex. The ancient Zentheri elder, their crystalline form dark with concern, addressed the assembly. "We must intervene. The Krex do not understand what they have done. They don't know about the protocols." "The protocols?" asked a younger representative from the Meridian cluster. After first contact, the elder's voice resonated through the chamber. "Humanity shared with us their entertainment media, their movies and stories. We saw countless tales of human adults moving mountains, crossing oceans, and breaking natural laws to rescue children. We thought they were metaphors, exaggerations. The elders' crystals dimmed. We were wrong." In the detention cells of the Dominants, Sarah Mitchell, age 13, led her fellow captives in what appeared to be simple childhood games. The Krex guards watched with growing unease as the children played red light, green light, not realizing they were mapping guard patrol patterns. They sang 99 bottles of milk, unaware each verse communicated timing and positioning to different groups. Supreme Commander Vexterra received another transmission, this one from the archivists, keepers of galactic history. Their message was simple. Query: "Are you aware of the Vraxi Empire?" Response: "Neither is anyone else. They took human children in their first contact. The humans did not just defeat them. They ensured no one would ever hear of the Vraxi again. They're just stories." Vexterra insisted to her increasingly nervous crew. "Propaganda to." "Supreme Commander," her censor officer interrupted, scales pale with terror. "The civilian ships, they're forming attack patterns. They're going to ram us." The tactical display showed hundreds of civilian vessels coordinating with military precision, preparing to sacrifice themselves to disable the Dominants. Behind them, Earth Force warships held position, waiting, not leading the charge, but supporting the civilians who had chosen to risk everything. Admiral Chen watched from her command ship as Operation Prometheus entered its final phase. The children's hidden transponders had done more than just track their location. They'd been systematically mapping the Dominance's internal systems, finding weaknesses, gathering intelligence. The Kreks still don't understand, her XO noted, watching the civilian fleet's maneuvers. They think these are just ordinary ships. That's their final mistake, Chen replied. Every civilian vessel in that fleet has been modified. For generations, humanity has prepared for this possibility. Every private spacecraft is required to have hidden military-grade systems, waiting to be activated if children are ever threatened. It's called the Guardian Protocol. The Krek's tactical officer stared in horror as new energy signatures bloomed across his display. Civilian ships were transforming, hidden weapon systems coming online, sophisticated electronic warfare suites activating. The cargo haulers, pleasure yachts, and mining vessels were revealing their true nature, a sleeping army built into the very fabric of human society. Impossible, Vex Terra whispered. No species would dedicate so many resources, prepare for so long, just to protect. Her words were cut off as the children began a new song. This one was different, a simple lullaby that every human child knew, broadcast on all frequencies. As the song played, the civilian fleet began its advance, each ship piloted by ordinary people who had trained their entire lives for this moment, hoping they would never need to use that training. Through the ship's corridors, the children's voices carried, "Sleep, my child, and peace attend thee," all through the night. The Galactic Council watched in awe as the civilian fleet executed maneuvers that should have been impossible for non-military vessels. The Zenthari Elder's final words echoed through the chamber. The humans have a saying. It takes a village to raise a child. What we didn't understand was the corollary. Every village will burn down the galaxy to protect its children. Sarah Mitchell smiled as she led the other children in the lullaby. Their captors didn't understand that every human child grew up knowing they were never truly helpless, never truly alone. That humanity had spent generations building redundancy upon redundancy, weaving a safety net into the very foundation of their civilization. The Kreks were about to learn that they hadn't just provoked Earth's military. They had awakened a system centuries in the making, a network of ordinary people who had dedicated their lives to ensuring that no human child would ever be truly vulnerable among the stars. The hidden strength. In the Dominance's command center, Supreme Commander Vex Terra watched in growing horror as her ship's systems began failing one by one. The children's countdown was reaching its end, and with each passing moment, more of her crew understood why taking human young was considered an act of madness. "Status report," she demanded, her scales shifting to the pale blue of deep concern. "Commander," her chief engineer's voice trembled. "The children. They've done something to our environmental systems. The algorithms are corrupted. They've encoded them using something called hopscotch patterns." In the detention area, Sarah Mitchell and her fellow captives continued their seemingly innocent games. The Kreks guards had long since stopped trying to understand the purpose behind their activities. The human children played clapping games that transmitted coded messages through vibrations in the ship's hull. They drew patterns with their feet that systematically mapped every weakness in the cell's construction. "It's what we trained for," Sarah reminded her companions as they prepared for the final phase. "Remember Ms. Rodriguez's class. Space is dangerous, but humans are resourceful." Admiral Chen received the coded update from the children's activities, transmitted through their subcutaneous transponders. Initiative Prometheus was never just about tracking them, she explained to the gathered fleet commanders. Every human child is a sleeper agent, trained through games and stories to become a formidable force if captured. The civilian fleet had transformed into a precise military formation. Dr. Emma Torres, now coordinating a squadron of converted mining vessels, addressed her fellow civilian captains. Like the story of the Trojan horse, they thought they were capturing helpless children. Instead, they brought aboard 30 highly trained operatives with a lifetime of preparation. Inside the Dominance, The children's resistance reached its crescendo. Their games had systematically disrupted ship systems, their songs had mapped patrol patterns, and their seemingly random activities had created chaos in the ship's computer systems. They had turned their prison into a command center, their captivity into an offensive. "Commander," the security chief reported, "we've lost control of the primary computer core." The children, they're using nursery rhymes as encryption keys. Our AI can't comprehend the pattern recognition required to counter them. Vexterra received a final transmission from the archivists. Historical analysis complete. Human children are not merely protected. They are weapons. Each game they learn is a military tactic disguised as play. Each song contains encrypted survival protocols. Their entire childhood is a carefully constructed training program, hidden behind the facade of innocence. The truth dawned too late. The Krex had assumed they were dealing with simple biological imperatives, adults protecting their young. Instead, they had encountered a civilization that had turned their children's protection into an art form, weaving defensive protocols into the very fabric of their society. Sarah and her fellow captives began their final countdown, using a simple playground rhyme. "Ring around the rosy, pockets full of posy." With each verse, another ship system failed. The children had spent their captivity executing a carefully orchestrated plan, one they had unknowingly prepared for their entire lives through games, songs, and stories. In Earth Force Command, Admiral Chen watched as Initiative Prometheus reached its culmination. "Every human child learns these protocols," she explained to the alien observers. "The games teach tactical thinking. The songs contain encrypted emergency procedures. Even their art projects train them in spatial mapping and systems analysis. We turned our children's entire development into a defense mechanism." The civilian fleet moved into its final attack position, their hidden military systems fully activated. Dr. Torres broadcast one last message to the Krex ship. "You thought you were safe because you held our children hostage. You didn't realize that every human child is trained to be their own rescue force. We don't just protect our children. We teach them to protect themselves." As the children's nursery rhyme reached its final verse, the Dominance's last functional systems began to fail. The Krex crew finally understood. They hadn't captured helpless hostages. They had brought aboard 30 highly trained operatives who had spent their entire lives preparing for this moment, hidden behind the innocent facade of childhood games and songs. A lesson written in starlight. Supreme Commander Vexterra stood in the darkened command center of the Dominance, watching as the last of her ship's systems succumbed to the children's coordinated assault. Emergency lights cast an eerie glow across the bridge as 30 young humans completed their final countermeasures, their nursery rhymes echoing through the dying ship like a victory song. "We have no choice," she announced to her crew, her scales now the white of total surrender. "Open all airlocks. Release the children." The civilian fleet held position as 30 space-suited figures emerged from the Dominance's airlocks. Each child activated their emergency thrusters, another skill disguised as a game in their early education, and moved with practiced precision toward the waiting ships. Dr. Emma Torres's voice came through all frequencies. "This is why we never come for our children unprepared. Every human ship, every human home, every human colony has emergency suits sized for children. We don't just hope for rescue. We ensure our children can survive long enough to be rescued." In the Galactic Council chamber, the recordings of the event were already being archived as a warning to future generations. The Zinthari Elder addressed the assembly. "Let this be recorded in all histories. Humanity does not merely protect their young. They have built their entire civilization around ensuring their children's survival." Admiral Chen watched as the civilian fleet executed a perfect rescue operation, one they had practiced countless times in simulations. Operation Prometheus was never just about tracking our children, she explained to the alien observers. It was about proving that humanity's greatest strength isn't our technology or our military might. It's our preparation. Sarah Mitchell, floating among the stars she had studied in Ms. Rodriguez's class, activated her suit's communication system. We knew you would come. Every story, every game, every lesson taught us that we're never alone. That humanity never abandons its children. The Galactic Council's judgment was swift and unprecedented. The Kreks would survive as a species, but their punishment would serve as an eternal reminder. They were tasked with establishing the Galactic Children's Protection Protocol, a set of laws and guidelines that would ensure no species ever again mistook human children, or any children, for easy targets. In the years that followed, the incident became known as the Prometheus Lesson. Alien civilizations studied how humanity had woven defensive protocols into children's games, survival training into nursery rhymes, and military precision into playground activities. They marveled at a species that had turned their children's development into both shield and sword. The Dominance was converted into a museum, its corridors preserved to show how 30 children had systematically dismantled a warship using nothing but their education and ingenuity. The children's drawings on cell walls were discovered to contain complex mathematical formulas disguised as hopscotch patterns. Their clapping games were revealed to be binary code that had reprogrammed ship systems. In the New Haven Colony's reconstructed education center, Sarah Mitchell, now a teacher herself, explained to her students why they played certain games and sang certain songs. "We teach you these things not because we expect you to need them," she told them, but because humanity learned long ago that the best defense isn't weapons or walls. It's knowledge passed down through generations. Dr. Torres retired from teaching but continued to train civilian ship crews in emergency protocols. The galaxy learned 3 things from the Prometheus incident, she would tell her trainees. First, that every human child is trained to be their own rescue force. Second, that every civilian vessel is a potential warship. And third, that humanity's greatest weapon isn't our strength or our technology. It's our absolute dedication to protecting our future. The Kreks, humbled but wiser, became the galaxy's strongest advocates for children's rights. Supreme Commander Vextara, in her final transmission before accepting her people's punishment, sent a message to Earth. "We thought we were teaching humanity its place in the galaxy. Instead, you taught us that true civilization isn't measured by military might or technological advancement. It's measured by how far a society will go to protect its most vulnerable members." In the end, the incident changed how the galaxy viewed not just humanity, but the very nature of strength itself. They had witnessed a species that had turned their children's entire development into a defense system, their civilian fleet into a sleeping army, and their peaceful expansion into the stars into an unbreakable shield for their future generations. The final exhibit in the Dominance Museum became the most visited site in governed space. It showed a simple display, a group of children playing hopscotch, their game pattern revealed to be an encrypted tactical manual. Below it, written in every known language, was humanity's message to the stars. "We come in peace, seeking friendship among the stars. But know this, our children are never defenseless, our civilians are never unprepared, and our response to any threat to our future will be absolute." This is not a warning. This is a promise written in the language of nursery rhymes and encrypted in the patterns of childhood games. We are humanity, and our children are our strength.